Okay, in this video we're going to talk about proportions. What is a proportion, how to solve a proportion, whether or not they're equivalent, um, things like that. Okay, so the first thing we want to talk about is what is a proportion. And all that you need to remember about a proportion is that it's an equation. In other words, it has an equal sign. It's an equation stating that two ratios are equivalent. So it's an equation, has an equal sign, and it has two ratios. So it compares two ratios. For example, 3 to 5, that's a ratio. Another ratio, 6 to 10. And we know both of these are equivalent ratios, equivalent fractions, because if you multiply 3 times 2, you get 6. If you multiply 5 times 2, you get 10. So this one is the same thing as this one, except that this one is twice as, or it has been multiplied by 2. But it has the same value, because if you reduce this one by 2, you'll get back to 3/5. So you need to have an equal sign between, and this is what a proportion looks like. Okay, that's all really a proportion is. And we're going to be doing this in a few minutes with a proportion box that I'm going to show you in a few minutes. Okay, so let's talk about how to determine if ratios are proportional. Two ratios form a proportion if their cross products are equal. So what does that mean, the cross products? So the first thing I want to talk to you about is this word right here. By now you should know what a product is. And a product is the answer to a what kind of problem? Multiplication. I hope you got that one right. So the product is the answer to a multiplication, right? The cross product is exactly that. It's going to make a cross whenever you multiply. So let's say, for example, this one right here. If I multiply 3 times 10, 3 times 10 gives me 30, right? So I'm going to write that down right here, 30. Now, if I multiply the other way around, if I multiply 5 times 6, you see the cross that I made right here? Okay, I'm cross multiplying. So 5 times 6 gives me 30 as well. So both cross products gave me a 30. This is the one for the second numbers, the 5 times the 6, and this is the one for the 3 times the 10. And two ratios form a proportion if their cross products are equal. So in this case we can see that 30 is equal to 30. So therefore, because both cross products gave me 30, then I know this is a proportion. These two ratios are equal to each other. They are proportional. Okay? That's what all that means. Now, to do what I just did, we're going to do these 3 steps. We're going to cross multiply the terms, and we're going to compare the products like I did just now. And if the cross products are equal, like this one, then we know that the ratios are proportional. So we know this is a proportion. But if they're not equal, let's say this was 20 or 25 or even 29, if it's not exactly the same number, then they are not proportional. Okay, so make sure you remember that. Alright, let's look at a few examples. Let's see. Can you tell me if these two ratios are proportional? Well, we're going to do the same steps we did a few minutes ago, which is going to be cross multiply. So I'm going to multiply 28 times 2, or 2 times 28, whichever way you want to look at it. So let's multiply that real quick. Let's see, that's a 2. So 2 times 8 is 16, carry the 1. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5, right? So that's 56. So the first cross product is 56. Now I'm going to multiply the other way around. 7 times 8. What's 7 times 8? Oh yeah, that's 56. Are they equal to each other? I believe they are. They're the same number. So because both cross products gave me the same answer, then we know that they are proportional. So we're going to write down the word proportional. And I know some of you are going to ask me, can I just write P? Or can I just write P-R-O-P? Or something like that? No, I want you to write the word proportional. They are proportional. You need to know how to spell it. You need to get used to it. So make sure you get plenty of practice. Now let's look at the next one. 3.6 times 3. I'm going to multiply that out over here on the side. 3.6 times 3. 3 times 6 is 18. Carry the 1. 3 times 3 is 9. Plus 1 is 10. Now remember, when we multiply decimals, you have to count the numbers behind your decimal. So let's count this 6 right here. That's one number that we have in this factor behind the decimal. How many do we have here behind the decimal? Well, we don't even have a decimal, so there's 0. The decimal is implied to be right here. So there really isn't nothing right there because that's a whole number. So what's 1 plus 0? It's just 1, right? So a total of 1 number behind our decimal is how many we need to have in our answer. So my decimal is 10.8. So when I multiply those two together, 3.6 times 3 gave me 10.8. And that right there, what I just did right here for you, this is how I reteach you multiplication of decimals in case you missed it the first time around. Okay, here's the next time, or here's the second one. 2 times 4.8, or 4.8 times 2. Doesn't really matter how you multiply, you get the same product, the same answer. 2 times 8 is 16, carry the 1. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9. Now again, you have to count the decimal placements. You have 1 decimal place behind your decimal right here, and you have 0 decimal place behind your answer right there. So you need to have a total of just 1 decimal place, okay, because you're going to add these two right here. You're going to add those two right there. So my answer has to be, my decimal has to be right there. So this answer right here that I got was 9.6. Are these two numbers equal? Are the cross product equal to each other? And the answer is no. So this is the symbol for not equal to. It's an equal sign with a slash through it. Okay, and we're going to write the word non-proportional. Okay, and that's how we know that they're not proportional. Alright, now that's one way that we're going to be dealing with proportions. Comparing them, cross-multiplying them to see if they're proportional. But the most common way of knowing, of using proportions in mathematics is to solve for a missing number. For example, we have a proportion right here. 4 nines is equal to 11 over a number, a certain number. It cannot be any number. It has to be a specific number so that these two ratios are equal. Same thing for over here. We're missing the m, so we're going to have to solve for the m. And the way we do that is exactly the same way we just did. We have to cross multiply. We have to find those cross products, okay? So let's do that right now. But in this problem right here, we're not going to cross multiply because the question that they're asking us to do is to find the scale factor. They want us to use the scale factor, and the scale factor is something really easy. The scale factor, the way you remember what scale factor is what number you are multiplying by. How does it get bigger or smaller? So in this case, for example, right here I have a 4, and if you look at the two top numbers, the two numerators, the 4 has to be equal to a 12. It has to change to a 12. The only way I can change that 4 to a 12 is if I multiply by 3. That gives me my 12, right? Well, the same thing for the 9. If I multiply the 9 times 3, that needs to give me the number that goes here. So what's 9 times 3? 27. Okay. So then the n is equal to 27. So here I resolve my problem. This n right here needs to be a 27 so I can have my numbers correctly. So for my answer, n is equal to 27. And I didn't have to cross multiply and I have to compare anything. All I did was just find that scale factor. This number right here, the number that you multiply by every single time, that's going to be your scale factor. And I abbreviate that with an SF so that you will remember what SF means, scale factor. The number you multiply by is always going to be your scale factor. Okay, let's use the scale factor again over here, see if we understood what I just did. I have 3 over m equals 27 over 45. The only way that I can get this 3 to change to a 27 is if I multiply 3 times 9, right? We saw that multiplication over here, 9 times 3 equals 27. So 3 times 9 gives me 27. So therefore, this number is called my what? My scale factor. Okay, so because that's the number that I'm multiplying by. Every time that I multiply by a number to change it to another number, that's going to be the scale factor, the number that I multiply by. So in this case, I have to multiply the m times 9 to give me 45. Wait a minute, I can't multiply a letter times a number. But what I can do is think, what number can I multiply by 9 that will give me a 45? And the answer to that would be 5. That's the only number that I can multiply by to give me 45. 5 times 9 is 45. Therefore, m has to be equal to 5. And again, we use that number that we multiply by, the scale factor. Okay, so that's what scale factor is. Scale factor is the number, make sure you write this down, that you multiply by. And I'm just going to leave it like that. This is not the formal definition, but it's the way that I want you to remember it, because this is the way I'm going to be referring to in class. What's that number that you multiply by? And you're going to have to say, oh, that's a scale factor. Okay, and remember the abbreviation for scale factor is a big S and a little f for scale factor. Okay, so that's one way of solving a proportion, solving that missing letter, missing number. Here's the other way to solve the proportion by finding that cross product, by cross multiplying. So the first thing we need to do is cross multiply, and then we're gonna divide. Let me show you what I mean by that. So here I have a y, right, and I have a 2. Well, I don't know what number I can multiply 15 by to get an 18. There's not a scale factor here that I can come up with at the top of my head. If this was a 30, then it would be simple, just 15 times 2 equals 30. And then I can do 2 times 2, that is going to be 4, so y equals 4, right? But in this case, that's not a 30, that's an 18. So there's not a scale factor that I can see out of the top of my head. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cross multiply, find that cross product. 15 times y and 2 times 18. Let's talk about this first one, 2 times 18. That's going to be the first one I want to do. 2 times 18, let's see, 2 times 8 is 16. Carry the 1, 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3, right? So that gives me 36. And I want to bring down my equal sign. You see how I know that I kind of cover it up with that X right there when the arrows cross. But there's my equal sign there. You have to copy it down to the next step. 36 is equal to the other cross product, 15 times y. Well, I don't know how you multiply 15 times a letter, except for just writing down the 15 and the letter right next to it. That's exactly what I want you to do. When you multiply number times a letter, it's just that number and that letter right next to each other. Okay, so if I have 2 times a, that's the same thing as 2a. If I have 5 times x, that's the same thing as 5x. If I have negative 7 times, I don't know, k, then the answer is negative 7k. It's just the same number with the same letter. Okay, notice that I wrote down my multiplication in different ways right here, so you can get used to that. Alright, so that's just extra practice right here, so hopefully you wrote this down somewhere in your notes. Now, look at what we end up with. We end up with an equation. This is called an equation because you have an equal sign in it. So this says that 36 is equal to 15 times y. So whatever this y is gonna be, whenever I multiply this number, that y, times 15, it has to give me 36. And the only way we're gonna find out what that y is equal to is if we get that y all by itself on that one side of the equal sign. Well, what do I mean by that? I mean that I have to get rid of that 15 so that I can get a statement here that says y equals something. And that would be my answer because I'm trying to look for y. So if I get to this last step where it says y equals, I don't know, 20, then y will be equal to 20, right? Well, in this case, it's not going to be 20 because I know 20 times 15 is not going to give me 36. But I do know that I need to solve this by using division. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to get rid of this 15 by dividing by that same number. This line right here means division. So 15y, and I'm going to divide it by 15. 15 divided by 15 is just 1, right? I can just write down a 1. But I am not going to write just a 1. I'm actually going to leave it blank because 1y is the same thing as just the y. How many y's do you see? 1y, right? And I don't have to tell you that it's only 1y. You know there's only 1y without me writing down that 1. So that's why I'm not going to write down the 1. It's always implied that there's a ghost 1 right there, if you will. Okay, there's a little ghost 1. It's always there, but you can't see it. Okay, so it's just a y. So 15 divided by 15 is just a y. And the short way of saying that is that 15 and 15 cancel out. Okay, so multiplication, 15 times y, and then you divide by 15, multiplication and that division, they cancel each other out. So it just leaves you that y. And if I do that to this side, if I want to remain equal to the other side, I have to do exactly the same thing to the other side. So 36 divided by 15, that's going to give me the answer that goes over here on this side. In order for me to finish this problem, I actually have to work it out. Remember, the top number always goes in. Top in, bottom out. Let's work out this division. Can 15 go into 3? No. but 15 can go into 36 at least twice, because I know that 2 times 15 is 30, right? So when I subtract, I get 6. 3 minus 3 is 0, and I have 6 remaining. Can I stop? I guess you could if I wanted to answer with a mixed number, but in this case I want a decimal. So I want you to put a decimal here, and I want you to bring up your decimal in the correct place in your quotient, and I want you to add a 0. Now when you bring that 0 down, you have 60, and I know that 15 times 2 was 30, and I know that 30 times 2 is 60, so 15 times 2 is 30, times 2 is 60. Oh, that's the same thing as 15 times 4, right? 15 times 4 is 60. So if I subtract those two, I get a remainder of 0. So y is equal to this number right here, 2.4. And that's how you solve a proportion using the cross product. Okay, I know I went into a lot of detail here on why to do it, why you do this and why you do that, but that's one of the best ways that you learn how to do something, by understanding how it works. So we're going to do it one more time on this next example, and then I'm going to have plenty of these examples in class for you to work out and see if you actually understood what we're talking about in this video. Remember that at any time, if you have trouble with anything, go ahead and work out the problems. By the way, I want to let you know that my favorite pet for today, and this pet is going to change every video that I make. My favorite pet for today is a lion. Okay, that you might want to remember that, a lion, like the Lion King. Okay, all right. So here's 2.6 over 3 equals 5.2 over s. Well, the way we're going to solve this is we're going to use cross multiplication, then we're going to divide. So multiply, then divide. All right, so here we go. Multiply 3 times 5.2. I'm going to come over here to the side, make it big so you guys can see it. 3 times 6, 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times 5 is 15. I have one number behind my decimal. I have 0 numbers behind my decimal here. So 1 plus 0 is just 1, right? So that's how many numbers I need to have here behind my decimal, just 1. So my answer here is 15.6. And that's going to be equal to the other cross product, which is 2.6 times s. And the way I told you here, when you multiply a number times a letter, is just that number times the letter. So it's 2.6s. Now, you want to solve for s. You want to know what that s is equal to. The only way to do that is to cancel out this 2.6. I want to get rid of it, so I can just be left with that s. The only way I can do that is if I divide by that same number, by 2.6. Because remember, anything divided by itself is just 1, right? And again, this 1 is just a ghost 1 right there. 2.6 divided by 2.6 is just a ghost 1. But I'm not going to write that ghost 1 because it's implied to be there. So those two cancel out. But if I do that to this side of the equal sign, I have to do it to this side of the equal sign. It's all about being equal to each other. It's all about being fair, right? If I give you $1, I gotta give somebody else $1 that sees me giving you $1. Because if not, they're gonna say, that's not fair, Mr. Burgueño. Alright, so 15.6 divided by 2.6. So 15.6 is the top number. That's the number that goes inside. And 2.6 is the number that goes outside. So this 6 right here has a decimal in front of it, right? The first step that we have to do is we have to move that decimal to the right to make it a whole number. And if I do it on the outside, I have to do it on the inside exactly the same way. So since I only moved it once to the right, I only move my decimal once to the right on the inside as well. So here's my new decimal placement. All I gotta do is move it straight up. There it is. Now that I move my decimal, I'm gonna go ahead and erase all these decimals so that I don't have to be seeing all that and get mixed up. So I end up with 26 on the outside and 156 on the inside. To finish this division, 26 cannot go into 1, but 26 cannot go also into 15, but 26 can go into 256. How many times? I have no idea, but I do know that 2 goes into 15 at least 7 times, right? So let's try that 7. What's 7 times 6? 42. So there's my 2, and bring up my 4, and 7 times 2 is 14 plus 4, that gives me 18. Oh, that's too much. This is only 156, this is 182. So that means that 7 is way too much. Let's try 6. I think I like 6 better. Can you guess why? What's 6 times 6? 36, right? And this ends in a 6, and 36 does 2. So I'm going to carry the 3 over here for the 36. Now 6 times 2 is 12, plus 3 is 15. You see why I like the 6? That ended in a 6, so that gave me a little bit of a hint that it might have been the right number to use here. So when I subtract, I get a remainder of 0, and my answer is just 6 because my decimal is back here, so that tells me that this is a whole number. So S is equal to 6, and I'm done. Okay, so that's how you know if this is correct or not. Alright, well, that's it for proportions. That's all you have to do. You have to learn. Remember that there's two ways to solve proportions. The first way, actually, let me get that back. The first way that we talked about is using the scale factor, that SF, the number that you multiply by to get to the other top number from the first top number, the number you multiply by, that 3, that 9, that's your scale factor. So if you know that there's a number you can get to, you can multiply by to get to the next number on the top or the next number on the bottom, then you know you can use a scale factor. That's one way of solving a proportion. The second way of solving the proportion, which will always work, even if you do have a scale factor and you don't see it, if you always do this one right here, the cross product, you will always get it right as well. But in this case, you have to do two things. You have to multiply, and then you have to turn around and divide. So for every proportion that you use the cross product method, you have to do two things. You have to multiply and you have to divide. So make sure you know how to do both of those two things before you attempt to cross multiply to solve a proportion using a cross product. Okay, well, hopefully you have this down by tomorrow when you get to class. All of these notes you will be able to use these notes during the worksheet that we're doing tomorrow. So make sure that you bring them with you and they are completed. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.